As the world's top climate scientists released a report full of warnings this week, they kept insisting that the world still has a chance to avoid the worst effects of climate change. It is still possible to forestall most of the dire impacts, but it really requires unprecedented, transformational change, said Ko Barrett, Vice Chair of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. The idea that there still is a pathway forward, I think, is a point that should give us some hope. That hopeful pathway, in which dangerous changes to the world's climate eventually stop, is the product of giant computer simulations of the world economy. They're called integrated assessment models. There are half a dozen major versions of them, 4 developed in Europe, 1 in Japan, and 1 in the US, at Pacific Northwest National Laboratory. What we mostly are doing, is trying to explore what is needed to meet the Paris goals, says Detlef van Vuuren, at the Netherlands Environmental Assessment Agency, which developed one of the models. World leaders agreed in Paris to limit global warming to less than 2 degrees Celsius (3.6 degrees Fahrenheit). The planet has already warmed about 1 degree Celsius, compared to pre-industrial levels. Meeting that goal will mean cutting net greenhouse gas emissions to zero within about 40 years. It would require profound changes, so profound, it's not immediately clear that it's even possible. That's why Van Vuuren and his colleagues turn to their computer models for help. How is it possible to go to zero emissions, he says. That's for transport, that's for housing, that's for electricity. Each of these models starts with data about current sources of greenhouse emissions. They include cars and buses, auto rickshaws, airplanes, power plants, home furnaces and rice paddies. The models also include assumptions about international trade, prices, and the cost of new technologies. Then the scientists force their virtual worlds to change course by introducing limits on greenhouse emissions. The models then try to satisfy that requirement in the most cost-effective way, as long as it's technologically feasible and doesn't run up against limits like the supply of land or other natural resources. The good news is that the models found a way to meet the target, at least in scenarios where world governments were inclined to cooperate in meeting their Paris commitments. In fact, according to Keywan Riahi, at the International Institute for Applied Systems, in Austria, they found multiple paths to zero carbon. The models tell us that there are, first of all, alternative pathways possible, that there are choices available to the decision maker, he says. Different models, using different assumptions, arrive at contrasting visions of the future world. But they're all dramatically different from the situation today. Some models show people responding to higher energy prices or government regulations by changing their lifestyle.